Well, joining us now is Zach Smith, legal fellow in the Meese Center at the Heritage Foundation. Zach, welcome. The draft report leans towards rejecting the notion of expanding the size of the Supreme Court. Zach, does that at all offer any legitimacy to the commission and its overall work?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Look, what I'm troubled about with this report is that the commission said its members were divided on the issue of court packing, which is adding justices to the Supreme Court in hopes of getting more favorable outcomes for a certain ideology or political party. The fact that the membership of the commission was divided on this very problematic question is very troubling, and I hope that the commission in whole will thoroughly reject this very problematic idea.
Zach, the draft also addressed case selection, the docket, and court practices, but it did focus heavily on term limits. It noted the U.S. is the only major constitutional democracy without fixed terms or a retirement age for high court justices. Zach, your thoughts on that? Can term limits help and, at the very least, make the court appear less partisan?
Well, I think one of the very interesting questions surrounding the term limits debate is whether this would require a constitutional amendment or not. Currently, the Constitution says that justices and federal judges shall serve during good behavior, which has been interpreted to mean essentially they have life tenure. And so one of the issues the commission is grappling with is whether this would require a constitutional amendment to change when and how federal judges and Supreme Court justices serve. And so I think this will certainly be a rather lengthy discussion surrounding the term limits issue.
Yeah. You know, conservatives have blasted this commission from the very beginning. Interestingly, it has some liberal groups now very upset. One organization responding to the draft as paralysis by analysis and promoting the status quo, which it said conservative support. Zach, what does that suggest to you about the commission's final recommendations? Will they fall on deaf ears?
Well, unfortunately, I think this entire process has been politicized. It's an attempt to politicize the court, an attempt to intimidate the justices into reaching certain decisions in certain cases pending before it. And all of that is very problematic. The Supreme Court is not a political branch of government. It should not be a political branch. The job of the justices is to faithfully apply the text of the Constitution, the text of the statutes, and interpret the laws as they're written. And so at the end of the day, again, I hope that the majority of the commissioners, a majority of Americans would realize that and reject any conclusions that really suggest otherwise.
Zach, recently we've seen justices from Amy Coney Barrett to Samuel Alito to Stephen Breyer, all different parts of the spectrum. They fanned out on what really feels like a PR resuscitation tour, attempting to refute the perception that the court is made up of partisan hacks now that Americans' approval of the court has hit a record low. Zach, regardless of the commission's work, does something need to be done to bolster the court's legitimacy and confidence?
Well, I think the best way the justices can bolster the court's legitimacy and competence is to do their job exactly as I described. Interpret the text of the Constitution, interpret the text of the statutes before them, and apply them to the case in front of them, and not to worry about poll numbers, not to worry about political considerations, because frankly, that is not the job of a Supreme Court justice. It's not the job of a federal judge. And to the extent justices or judges try to engage in politics, that's really where the harm to our constitutional system comes into play. And at the end of the day, that is how the legitimacy of the courts would be undermined.
All right, Zach Smith with the Heritage Foundation, you are a foremost expert on this topic. We appreciate you coming in this evening. Thanks.
Of course.